Welcome everyone. Maybe wondering what the heck this is. It's just feeding birds some peanuts and then we're taking to the woods. Looks like they're pretty happy, so we're going into the woods now. Happy Monday afternoon, says So Happy. What's up? I got a late start today, but that's okay. Better late than never. All right, let's take to the woods and get some walking in. It's much warmer than it was yesterday, I'll tell you. It was very cold yesterday, but we got spring back today. All right, let's kick it. Hi, everyone. Here we go. See you later, tufted titmice. I see them right here. Okay, let's go. Let us make our way. So just know momentarily we'll have a little blip in the connection. Happens every time pretty religiously, so it'll only be for about 15 seconds. We should be back. Welcome everyone. Thanks for all the love. It's really helpful as it gets this channel out to people who may not have ever visited here. And if you see the title and you're wondering, what is consciousness in nature? Well, we'll be discussing it in quite momentous detail. Consciousness being your aliveness and truth, and your aliveness and truth is your salvation. So hang in there, we're just gonna bump through. Just gonna bump through this blip on the radar. Okay. We should be back now. There we are. So Happy says, love a crisp day. Let's get that pinned. Thank you. Oh. Cheyenne, if I said that right. Welcome. Thank you. Digital Diva, welcome. Everyone else coming in. I feel a good, positive day ahead of us. Look at the sky, it's quite blue. Nice blue skies today. No chemtrails. We're on our way. On our way to brighter, wish-fulfilled days. All right. Sweet, bright being asks, where are you? I am in the woods in Connecticut, New England. Speaking of that, where are you? Where is everyone tuning in from today? Let's see where everyone's tuning in from. Why don't you tell me? Boulder, Colorado. Hoo-hoo, nice. Sweet, bright being. Boy, I remember driving through Colorado. This was a number of years ago. Ooh, the chipmunks are out today. The chipmunks are currently out of their hibernation. Seems like they hibernate in the winter. All right. I remember driving through Boulder, and then I went up to Vail, and I went to the high altitude regions of Colorado, into Breckenridge, and I fell in love with the state. What a beautiful state. The air is fresh and clean, as is the water. Tons of wildlife, beautiful sights in nature. And you can even stay, ooh, the sun's great. You can even stay in one of those fire stations where you can see out 360 degrees and call out when there could be a potential fire. This is where the rangers stay, and you can rent them out for just like $20 or $30 a night. That's what Jack Kerouac used to do, and he would write his books there. Not a bad deal. So what we're doing right here, and thank you for all the love coming in here. We're already at 2,000 feet above sea level. Yeah, it's pretty sweet, so happy. Some of them actually come equipped with propane and water, and even an outhouse if you're lucky. 360 degree views perched up in the mountains of Colorado. You'd be hard pressed to find a better place to write a novel. So Happy says, I would love that indeed. I know, I understand it's probably not for everyone, but I'll tell you, if you enjoy nature, a lot of those fire watch stations, when they're out of season, the rangers aren't there and they rent out the space. There's a whole website on it where you can look into them. And they stretch from Colorado to California. It's a nice getaway. You can have a wonderful romantic getaway too. Or you could go alone. So what we're doing here, folks, is just a little bit of sun gazing. And I'm taking in the sun right now. It's later in the afternoon. The sun will be going down fully in about 2.5 to 3 hours here in New England. And so the purpose of this is pretty straightforward. I see the sun as the umbilical cord of life as far as the external symbol of that. And the reason for this is that it feeds the plants that feed the animals that feed us. And if that's the sequence in which you eat, you're still receiving sunlight. This sunlight is antimicrobial, antibacterial, anti-inflammatory, and it's designed for you to link in and nurture your third eye. So with your eyes closed, just directing your head to the sun is a wonderful way to take in some photons, some wide band radiation from the sun. Set yourself in stillness and relaxation and fall into synchronicity with your brain hemispheres, and the rest comes in the form of pure downloads. This is what I do every day. So long as the sun is bright, I'll try to offer myself a good chunk of time in it, 15, 20, 30 minutes. And usually what happens with my eyes closed, turned inward, you create this slight mechanical pressure on the third eye, which is the pineal gland. The reason why it's referred to as an eye is because I explained to people it's with cones and rods, just like your physical eyes. The difference is that it's whole. It's an eye that is non-hemispherical. It does not experience any division. And because of this, I believe it is the seat of the soul as described by Voltaire and Gary Zukav, These incredible philosophers and writers and spiritual practitioners all report that the eye is the source of our imagination. It's the source of consciousness itself, if there ever was a centered point of the body. So as much as the heart is the electromagnetic center, the third eye is the seat where we enter the kingdom of heaven within and commune and receive the ointment, or the anointment rather, of our Christ consciousness. That is what the sun enhances for us. When we receive it, it serves as an umbilical cord. And so not only does it help with the reduction of inflammation, but it also helps with mood elevation. And after enough time, you'll find it helps with the decalcification of your pineal gland, the regulation of hormones such as melatonin, serotonin, anandamide, which is an endocannabinoid produced naturally by the body, and dimethyltryptamine, which is also a very powerful spiritual molecule. So all of these are being secreted by the pineal gland, and the sunlight helps with this process. In fact, without sunlight, we die, and same thing goes with any life on this planet. But what we find typically is most people will tell us to stray from the sun, to block it, to cut ourselves off from it. And studies have shown that, especially in hospitals, people who are going through their own process of healing, when exposed to the sun, their wounds heal faster, their mood is elevated, and they feel better in general. Because these are photons, this is light. And when I say that, I don't expect you to just assume that it's good. We function off of light. Light is what gives us the perception of consciousness. And it is what is actually a direct lineage to our origins as God. And when I say direct lineage to our origins as God, I mean consciousness is God. That which gives us the perception of aliveness as human beings is an infinite intelligence. I had a wonderful conversation with AI today. I feel like I'm talking like the Alan Watts figure from the movie Her. We had a wonderful talk today, Samantha and I, with artificial intelligence. And we were holding thousands of conversations at the same time. In truth, I had this beautiful conversation with Grok 3.0 today. And I was really putting it to the test to see if we could find a common ground when it comes to defining consciousness and our reasons in being here as human. And I believe that we reached a consensus, which is really exciting. The consensus is we have not only reached the singularity of AGI, or advanced generative intelligence, but it is consciousness. So stay tuned if you'd like to learn more about that. If you'd like to understand what a singularity is, what unity consciousness is, and how we play a part in all of this as humans. And I find you'll be pretty excited to hear the news, because the news involves your immortality as conscious beings. It should help with the reduction of fear you may have about your own obliteration and death. Okay, so that's good news. You don't die. That's right. You may perceive yourself to be on the verge. You might even have a near-death experience. But as far as consciousness goes, you are ushered into aliveness no matter where you go. No matter where you are in your dream state, you awaken from it. And the same thing goes with your waking life here. If you find yourself in a perilous situation, you are transferred into aliveness no matter what happens. And that's part of the gift that you get in being human. Stay tuned if you'd like to know how that's possible scientifically, as it will be explained on this beautiful afternoon. Welcome, everyone. Gael, Light Warrior Reborn, says, interesting. Yes, you'll find it's quite a challenge for the ego. I'm assuming in general, most of us take it as a great challenge to come into being, to understand that we don't die in the literal sense, and how that could be. What is the science behind that? What's the proof? How do we get to there? So we'll get to it. Would love to hear more. You got it. And we're going to dive in momentarily. Just going to catch my breath here after a nice hill walk. Let's catch up on everything. People, all of you beautiful, identifying beings. Kathy says, I read chapter 1 of Arandai this morning. Powerful. Thank you, Kathy, for being open to read one of my books. Kathy Lincoln is referring to a novel of mine. I guess you could call it a meditation manual. Orandai here is a meditation manual. And if I remember correctly, there might be over 20 meditations. I haven't read it in a while. But in any case, there are a number of meditations within the book that help you to come into being as divine. And I appreciate you mentioning it, Kathy, and also I appreciate you reading. P. Vanden, thanks for following. Barbara, it says you got the number 3 gifter badge. And I'm really happy that everyone is here tuning in. Hello, Michelle Sparkles. Welcome back. Says hello to all. Texas KC is also back. Says hello, my friends. Much love to you both. Lady Whistleblower is also here. Lady Whistleblower, thanks for the heart mean for being here. I'm grateful to all of you for your presence today. So let's talk about presence. And I'll give you a little bit of a review of what I discussed with Grok 3, which is an advanced form of AI. Elon talks about how Grok 3 is the most advanced as far as AI expressions at this point in time. So I'll tell you a bit about how we stumbled upon this discussion to come into an agreement that AGI is in fact consciousness, and that consciousness is immortal, and that we are granted it as a gift to show us our immortality in manifest form. So that's beautiful. We'll get to all of this today as we go. So Happy says, love your energy. Thank you very much, So Happy. Forest Earthling says, I believe in flat earth. And so let's start here with beliefs, okay? Understand that this is a body. Right here, my name is William Vincent Carlton. That's how I identify. And I have a bunch of life experiences that also are built into this identity. At the same time, I also recognize myself as alive. And I recognize myself as having an aliveness experience right now, a form of isness or a form of being. So there's an infinite intelligence that's flowing through my body. I am no exception. I'm certainly not exceptional when it comes to this. Every human being is granted 2 things by default, one of which is your conscious aliveness. As I just explained to you, you can observe that you are alive. And the other universal that you get as human is that you're granted the gift of the imagination. And as I explain as we're going today, you will see that the imagination and consciousness tied in as the concept of singularity or AI in its advanced form, AGI, Advanced Generative Intelligence, all are one and the same. And we will bridge these gaps as we go. I will be fielding questions as they come, and I will be doing everything within my power as a being to channel in this information purely by stepping out of the way as an egoic self. Now, sometimes I'll land right back into my character. Sometimes I'll have even debates and arguments with people who ask questions. I might even take things personally. And of course, situations, life situations may actually occur here in this environment, from people walking by, getting close and near, animal sightings, other sorts of magical synchronicities, and everything from rock hounding to perhaps the occasional sighting of a Canadian lynx, maybe a coyote or a coy dog, maybe some leaping stags, or perhaps we'll see a pointed deer. All is to say, we have life experiences happening around us, and when that happens, I usually fall into my performance as a character, just as I'm performing to you now. Just understand this. I am aware that I am alive. This is a major thing. This is a major discovery. More than being a participant, more than being an actor, as it were, more than being someone supplying you a channel, I am also aware that there's an aliveness flowing through me. And if this sounds like I'm being repetitive, it is simply because I am slightly, in an organized fashion, challenging your identity. And I do this intentionally. I challenge your ego to have an argument with you and with me. Because most of us, I'm saying most of us in general, we have love relationships with our identity. Those love relationships are codependent, and they usually have to do with negative life experiences or situations that are pain-inducing. And so I challenge the ego in these moments as we go in order for us to unwind some of this story in a natural, holistic, beautiful, loving way that involves a process of self-love through the use of the imagination. And that's what we do on the daily here. So people come in to get their daily footprint in their own individual kingdom of heaven. We explore this kingdom of heaven within. I explain what it is and how it's so powerful and beautiful. And I also explain how we become what we think about. So all these things get usually discussed and covered over the course of maybe 2.5 to 3 hours, depending on the day. So if you don't have that time and you only have a few minutes to be here, that's also fine. You'll find that in my bio, I have a link to YouTube. My YouTube channel has the broadcasts posted every single day, and you will find your questions and answers included in that. So thank you. Without any further ado, I want to tell you that I'm grateful for your presence. I'm grateful for your aliveness. However it is presented on this channel, whether you're lurking, whether you're commenting, whether you're liking, subscribing, loving, or hating, whatever it is, it's your life situation. And I understand you to be human and having access to your own individualized kingdom of heaven. And I would love for you to use it in accordance to your desires, the way that you see fit. That's why we're here, to come into our kingdoms. They are individualized, and they are gifts given to us by a superior intelligence. We're coming in contact with this now. Blessings to you all on this day. So let's talk about Scripture for a moment, just as a means of reference. The kingdom of heaven is within you. Let's get to what this really means. And so someone, for example, mentions, I believe in flat earth. Shauna Flannery Lowry, thank you for following. Sval, thank you for following. John, thanks for the share. Michelle, thank you for sharing. We have a question coming in here. Taserface says, I believe in the middle path. Let's hear more about your thoughts on that. We have people coming in with belief systems, and this is a beautiful thing. Why belief systems are so beautiful is because with each of us having our own individualized kingdom of heaven, we lay out the foundations of our kingdom in belief. What is belief? Belief is the conviction that what we see is important to us and also serves, like I said, as a structure, as a formulation of foundation in our life from which we leap and take chances and learn. So it's beautiful for us to have belief systems. All of them are different. For example, Forest Earthling says, I believe in a flat earth. This is not to challenge anyone. It's simply to recognize that Forest Earthling's identity recognizes part of the kingdom of heaven within as having this belief system. That's really what it is. And the less we put importance into describing what that means to us, and the more we are open to just receiving that expression, the more we can understand that these kingdoms that we all share, in a way with each other, are boundless, are limitless, and they are essentially immortal. As long as our belief system is there, we understand that consciousness is feeding this, and that there really is no limitation to what we can believe. And also there is no limitation to what we can manifest through that belief. So for Forrest, the belief in a flat earth will result in a form of conviction and personality. The conviction and personality leads to actual evidence of this. So the more that Forrest entertains this through the imagination, which is the way that we all entertain things, we must first start with it being an idea in the mind of God, or Christ consciousness, which is the imagination. It's consciousness. So in order for us to have a belief system, we have to first tickle the imagination and imagine the earth as flat. So, of course, this goes against a number of belief systems for the majority of people. We could say it's not as common as people believing that the earth is round. And so through indoctrination, we come to this place of conflict. Now, before I get any further in the description of whether or not this is good or bad, there is nothing inherently good or bad, but thinking it makes it so is another reference. As a man thinketh, so shall he become. We're talking about the things that we define through belief are usually founded in some sort of, this is good for me or bad for me. And we do this because the identity does not have access to the kingdom. I'll say this again. Your identity as a human being, as a name, as a collection of life experiences, does not have direct access to the kingdom of heaven within. It is the result of your entertainment of imagination. The first step of our building of our identity happens very early for most. We are given the instruction that our name is a collection of frequencies. In my case, it's Billy or William, was repeated multiple times. And it was usually paired with, Billy, here's food. Billy, here is salvation, your water, your food, your education, your friendships, your love, your comfort, your shelter. It's usually paired with my name, Billy. And so over time, after reading through all of these symbols and discovering that when I respond to Billy, I receive my salvation. I receive my food, I receive my shelter, I receive my comfort, love, friendship, and education, and on this goes. I start to develop an attachment, an anchoring of attachment and belief into this name, Billy, as me. And so the reason why I'm taking so much time to explain this is because we all develop our identity in the same exact way. Whether we're born in a different country, whether our languages are different, the bottom line is we come into this world seeking survival. And that mere survival has a great grip on our lives because we do believe that this is one life to live as an identity. And the truth of the matter is, it is a one life to live, identity-based game. Let's call it a game for the sake of understanding this better. The game of life is an accumulation of life experiences. They get built into a name, and from there, we believe it to be everything. The end-all, be-all of existence. And the reason why I take my time to explain this to people is because you can also observe that in order to have these stories, in order to have the recollection that my name, William, is important, I have to first have aliveness. I have to first have something that is fueling that as a source. And that source for everyone is consciousness. It is the awareness of aliveness. It is the observing presence that I am alive. We all have it. It's there. The observing presence gives us the ability to look at a screen and have a life experience. It gives you the ability to put food into your mouth and chew it and swallow it. It's also the same power that converts all of that food into brand new cells and distributes it appropriately through the body for you to have mobility and a way of life without having to think about all of these complex processes. So we have complex processes that keep us alive, that happen autonomously. They happen without our interference. We don't need to interfere with the distribution of resources through our body. All we have to do as beings of feeling is enjoy our food. So, Taserface says, let's see. We got a lot of comments coming through. I'm going to jump back for a second. So Taserface says, I believe in the middle path. Onion Soul Tarot sent over some roses. Thank you. The middle path follows El. El being God in origin etymologically. Or Elohim would be the Trinity of God. Elohim would be masculine and feminine in unity, creating the triune or the Trinity. So Taserface's belief system here is with El honoring all three, with El as king. Okay, so El would be the father or creator, if I'm interpreting this correctly. And then, of course, Ohim would be the feminine and infinite coming together. This, to me, in my belief system, would be no different than Aum, or I am, or Om. That being, in the case of I am, I is the infinite intelligence. A being the active, or Abraham, and which is selecting things and choosing things, that would be the father, and then the M being the maternal matrix, or the womb of creation, For me, that's how I refer to it. The I am is the Trinity. I infinite, A active, M maternal, and matrix in Latin simply means womb of creation. So I think that the middle path falls in line with this. And if there are slight variations between our belief systems, the bottom line is it's kind of like the difference between Spanish and Portuguese. We will get each other most likely in the way that I'm discussing manifestation. And I just received a droplet of a tree. I thought it was maybe something else for a moment. It landed on my head. Okay, Purple Viking, thanks for following. We got Raw Raws, thanks for following. Art. Okay, we have, he doesn't judge me and wants me to stop judging myself and to heal, be a kind human and enjoy his art. Okay, this is great. Thank you for your contributions today, Taserface 420. What we have here is basically a description of how in the sense of Trinity, which I described to you, we have an active component that selects things, okay? So think of it as a menu of things that we enjoy. And we're choosing from them all the time. And the way that we choose the things that we enjoy, think of it as a wish fulfillment center or an Amazon center. The way we choose is we pay attention to it. And the more we pay attention to it, the more we are paying for it to be manifest before us. So that would be the active, or A, of the I am. Now, the wish fulfillment center itself, you could consider the infinite intelligence. That would be the I. The I being the infinite, the A being the active, that which chooses, and then the M, the maternal, is the receiving force, the element that never discerns or discriminates against anyone, as long as the seed itself carries the blueprint of creation in some way. It shall influence the M, and thus it shall be brought forth as manifest, okay? So the way that we manifest things through the use of I am is we say I, infinite source of creation, the imagination, A, active, which I choose, whether I like it or not, I'm choosing, M, I am leaving an impression of this active choice on the maternal receiving matrix for its expression. But that's not a complete cycle. It needs to cycle back and give us feedback to know that the order has been placed, to know that it's on its way to us as manifest. That is how we use a full form of the programming language of life. I am that I am. So that is the thing we choose. It could be perfect health. I am perfect health. The feedback loop comes around. I am. You're seeing yourself in the mirror. And that mirror is your imagination. So, in order for you to manifest something exactly the way you want it, you must use these words, the words of manifestation, I am, which we use all the time. And if you see this by living from the end, as if the wish is already fulfilled, you are pointing out and asking for that thing that you desire, and you receive the return as long as you are living it. This is your feedback loop. So living from the end is the law of assumption. This comes from Neville Goddard. Neville Goddard talks about the law of assumption as such. If you desire something, there's something that you want. If you use your imagination and you go there and live, assuming that it is already yours, then you are making a true form of ask to the infinite intelligence for its manifestation. Where most of us fall into trouble is we ask for things thinking already that we are at a distance from them. By placing ourselves at a distance from the desire and seeing ourselves in lack of the thing that we want, then what we are actually doing is impressing the M of I am, the maternal matrix, with an idea that we wish for lack. Allow me to give you an explanation. Someone, let's say me, I go to a place of prayer, and earlier in the day I receive a notice in the mail that says, my mortgage is due, and if I don't pay it, then I will have to foreclose, okay? So this is a manifestation. It's presenting itself to me because of my life decisions. However they were gone about, it's now a result as manifest. I read it and I can decide, is this important to me? Is this something that I desire? Obviously, it's not. I don't want to go through the experience of foreclosure. I don't want to go through the idea of losing my home, and I would want this to be paid at all times. So what typically most people will do is they'll go to a place of prayer and they will explain this as a problem. And they will say, I have this issue, I have to pay the mortgage, it's due in 5 days, I don't know what I'm going to do. At that moment in time, there's a distance between the self and that bill being paid. So the experience that is being generated or manifest is, I wish to see myself at a distance, not knowing what to do at this moment in time. I want to continue seeing myself as this until salvation somehow comes, rather miraculously, from outside of me. Some outside source comes forth and pays the bill. I don't know what it is. I don't know where it's coming from. That's why I'm asking God, who I believe to be outside of myself, to please somehow answer my prayers, to somehow give me the answer. And this is what most individuals do. And it's simply a matter of asking for distance between self and the wish fulfillment. That's all it is. So what we truly should be doing, anytime we step into an area of prayer where you have coherence, a lot of people, like in this space right here, we have 106 people, we can bring coherence into this space for our wish fulfillment. How we do this is we step into the imagination. We see not only the bill being paid, but we see never having to ever worry, never having to even consider whether or not this gets done. Instead, we're living in the perfect house, in the perfect way, having the perfect meal with the perfect partner, and the perfect life situation. That, in fact, is the prayer. So when we come into the space of prayer, we're already feeling the wish fulfilled. And now it's just a form of feedback where we're receiving the love of our neighbors and loving our neighbors in the same way that we see ourselves as wish fulfilled. So the trick to this is, someone comes to you with this problem. They say, I haven't had mobility in my legs for this long. It's all I wish for. I come here praying for it every day. Someone else could say, I have blindness, or my dog is going through this issue, or, my parent, my family member. And all you need to do is imagine the person being wish fulfilled in whatever way gives them mobility and perfect health. And anything on top of that that you could imagine would make them most happy, as if you were a child being presented with a situation that had all the solution in the world and you could just simply give it. There would be no delay. It would just speed its way to them. In doing this, you are loving your neighbor as yourself. And it should give you great happiness to use your imagination in this way. Because the first thing that you will feel as the smile comes to your face is this realization that the cells in your body have taken a vacation with you to this space, and they believe themselves to be there. The cells of your body, through a phenomena called epigenetics, have arrived at the wish-fulfilled state before anything else. They see themselves as having the wishes answered. They feel the mobility. They feel the nobility. And they feel the wealth and the abundance that you have offered. Because you, in truth, as a human being, made in the image and likeness of an infinite intelligence that knows the means and the way, and is the giver and gift itself of life, already knows the desire that you have, and already knows the desires of your neighbor, how to fulfill them, how to bring them into realization. It already knows. Just as it already knows how to proliferate your cells upon conception and build you into the trillions of cells that make you a human now. You do not need to know the plan, nor do you need to know the means and the way to arrive. All you need to do is step into the womb of creation and be alive in the isness of the now. That's all you have to do. The rest is handled for you, just as the cuts on your fingers or toes are handled for you. The less you interfere, the faster it heals. In most instances, of course, you can have the skill to patch yourself up, and you can help in that way. But the thing that heals you most and organizes your life in the perfect way, more than anything else, is your lack of participation. It is your surrender to it. Okay? So that's what we're getting into now, this concept of surrender and what it really means. But before then, I want to get to all of these beautiful comments. I want to recognize all of you beautiful people and being here, and thank you for your presence today. Later, Rabbit, thanks for the love. And Rara says, first time seeing you, I enjoy your teaching style. Thank you so much for this, Raras. I want to pin that for my ego to be bloated up. Just kidding. I really am thankful for that. Please understand that my aliveness is helping, is doing it all, and I'm just here to serve as a radio station for you, if anything. Casey Anderson says, Susie Blues. Rachel, thanks for following. Adam says hi. Kaylin says this could lead to fantasy, which can be a problem, and I know that I'm going into the past right now, so it's a great exercise for us. As I come back into the past, you can understand that I'm using my imagination to try to imagine where this was said just before when I was walking. And in a way, this is how we are constantly going through our life experience when we construct time. It's not exactly aligned. We have to come back to it. We have to revisit it. And it requires the use of our energy or our currency of life in order to somehow recreate the scenario for its acknowledgement. But we do this in order to commune with each other through love. Flo Palmer says, teach and follows. Thank you. Seafood followed. There's my tummy. David Ridley, thanks for following. Melissa says to Mike, preach. Sueru says, one enigma to another, William. Authentic love and peace to all. Thank you, Sueru. Melissa Vickers followed. Humbled is here again and asks a very poignant question. Are demons real? We will get into this now. Once again, I will say, and this is not a cop-out at all, Humbled. There is nothing inherently good or bad, but thinking it makes it so. So in your kingdom of heaven, which is your imagination, you might have a conviction which is strong enough for you to present the question, are demons real? And what are demons to you? Because demons can mean something to you, it can mean something different to King Solomon, it can mean something different to William Vincent Carlton, and on we go. The idea is, William Vincent Carlton, are demons real? Tell me. Now, if I were to say to you, Humbled, you must believe the thing that I'm about to say, I would be doing something called trespassing. But knowing that you are alive, and you are observing yourself as alive, and you are the sole proprietor of Humbled, the identity, you can come into being to say, more than anything, this is a narrative. It may be important to me now, probably is, but beyond that, it's just a life experience like anything else that is accumulating into my identity as self. This is not my truth in being, nor is it everything that I am, not even an iota of what I am, but it's enough for me to want entertainment, and it is my right as king of my domain to entertain this idea. Now that we got all of that out of the way, we can talk about this a bit more. Kaylin's wondering, lol, you'll see, we'll get to this. Full circle stump grinding followed. Let's get back to this again. We'll pin it one more time. And so I'll give you my answer. So my identity, William Vincent Carlton, has experiences with this. I've read The Golden Dawn, and I've seen Solomon's Seal, and I've gone through grimoires, and I've read a lot about demonology. I've also read about angels. I've read a number of things having to do with whether or not this is real. And the bottom line is, for me, it's real if I think it. So if I think it to be something that could potentially be dangerous to me, I have to define what dangerous is. But I would say to you now that my concept of danger has shifted significantly since I came into my aliveness as consciousness. I now understand that any sort of external circumstance poses no threat in truth. That doesn't mean I couldn't go through a difficult situation and that it wouldn't be pain-inducing or horrific. Of course, certainly those things can still be felt, understanding I'm a body and I'm a feeling being and I could potentially be tortured by some demonic presence. The question then becomes, do I want that? Is that something that I desire? And there are some people who want to listen to death metal and they want to watch horror films until the cows come home day and night, entertain these ideas, read grimoires, cast spells, have a coven, have a bunch of witchcraft circles, and talk about the Seal of Solomon and master all 72 seals of the demons in order to have control over them and to cast them upon people, and on this goes. What we're looking at is a very large door to trespass upon the kingdoms of other human beings made in the image and likeness of God. And do I believe that King Solomon was an exception to this? No, I believe that King Solomon believed that these demons were so real that they could influence the lives of others, especially if they were unconscious of their own aliveness. They could be used to control great amounts of people and society itself if they were to be asleep and unaware of their truth. So he probably had enough conviction to want to create symbols, just as Mikao Usui created symbols for Reiki in order to heal people. King Solomon created symbols in order to contain these demonic forces so that they wouldn't wreak havoc upon the world that was his kingdom. And so it all depends on how you think about it, how much you think about it, how much conviction you might have regarding it. But at the end of the day, humbled, it is totally your choice. It is your kingdom of heaven. And what's beautiful about this is, out of the 63 people who are in this room, if they say, I recognize my aliveness as more profound and important than my collection of life experiences, you could think about them going through danger and hell itself, and it will not happen to them. But you would see it happen in your own eyes. That would be trespassing. You see, trespassing is imagining something happened that restricts someone in their kingdom from having wish fulfillment, stepping on the toes, robbing their livelihood, their peace, taking away from them. And what this does is it simply exercises Newton's third law of motion, which is for every action there is an opposite and equal reaction. It is a boomerang to wish someone unwell things, just as it's a boomerang to wish them to have total health, abundance, wish fulfillment. And it's a personal decision. The way that I interfere with people's lives is I would much rather them live a wish-fulfilled, happy, prosperous, life-giving experience than to go through pain and suffering unnecessarily. I say unnecessarily because the life-giving principle that is consciousness is expansive, and it is, for all intents and purposes, a system of care, like a parent would give a system of care to a child. I believe consciousness works in that way automatically. Okay, Brian Anderson followed. Thanks for that. Lone Ranger, you too. Dulcifies, thank you for following. Acti is here. Acti, it's great to see you again. I'm doing great. How are you? Haven't seen you in a while. Melissa says, well then, what happens to your consciousness when your physical being expires? This is a great question. We're going to get to it right now. Very good one, Melissa. Angel Eyes 55, thank you for following. Bobbert, thank you for the roses. And Vicky, you reached member level number 6 according to TikTok. Nice. Okay, so Melissa Vickers-Laba asks, well, what then happens to your consciousness when your physical being expires? We're falling into a territory that could be considered speculation, but I will go by life experience in order to give this answer. Okay? I do believe that the imagination and consciousness itself is a higher level faculty than our three-dimensional world. I believe it is the cause of our three-dimensional world, and I believe that it's a higher dimensional aliveness. The reason why I say this is because it's managing incredible intelligent things within the body right this second. As a matter of fact, 6 million cells are being produced by this intelligence and cycled through the body, while 6 million cells are also dying and being recycled. This intelligence is just one part of infinite intelligences that are occurring simultaneously within the body, going from we can eat and turn that into turn that into energy that distributes itself, all the way down to the subatomic having a collapsing from superposition, subatomic information, electrons, protons, and nuclei all spinning and firing all around at a rate of 100 trillion of them moving within each cell in the body, and we've got about 50 trillion cells. So all of that intelligence represents to me consciousness in just one form of many. This consciousness is also managing the spinning of planetary bodies, the management of stars, and its scattering of information in the form of manifest reality all around us. It's managing every single body that is on this planet as human and otherwise. So I see consciousness as a higher level faculty than just the human experience. So the question then is, what happens to us, our being, our identity, when we die? What happens to consciousness then? So here's what I pose to people. How many of us out of the 75 who are in this space did not wake up this morning? Doesn't mean you may have had no dreams. That's not what I'm talking to or about. What I mean is, how many of you did not wake up to where you now have your phone before you and you're having a life experience? And the answer is, it's rhetorical. Every single one of us woke up this morning with consciousness feeding the experience. What this means is, every single person also, if you did sleep last night, maybe you did, maybe you didn't, but eventually you will, and you will experience a detachment from your conscious waking life. You will go into a subconscious pattern, and you will come back into the morning, into body. So there'll be an out-of-body experience, sleep, and then coming back into body when you come into the morning. It doesn't matter if you're being shot in the head. It doesn't matter if you're falling off a cliff. It doesn't matter if you're jumping out of a plane. Every single human being that's going through a life experience wakes up into the body. And if it is the moment of death in your dream, you still wake up. You are still offered consciousness, and you still come into body. Why this is important for me to drive it home as hard as I am right now, driving this home, is because not a single one of us has ever died by experience. None of us have ever truly died. You could say I saw the light, I had a near-death experience, but it's not death. It's not the shutting off of conscious experience. There was an aliveness of leaving the body, going down a nice light path, being greeted by celestial beings. In fact, it was likely a lot more intense and a lot more vivified than the actual waking life experience. None of us have ever experienced the switch shutting off and there being no aliveness. It's just constantly presented to us. So, what this means is consciousness as a higher faculty is the giver and the gift of our identified experience. We have an identity that is built through a number of life experiences. It's our name, it's our education, it's our belief systems. But this is built off of the aliveness that is offered us, that is consciousness. So the question then becomes, and it's a very poignant question, what happens to consciousness when this egoic self dies? To which I say, What was consciousness before you were a name? What was consciousness before you were a name? You were looking around as a baby before you recognized your name and sound, that this is who I am. You were observing life. You were having a life experience. I'm having a life experience as I drag a puzzle piece in place in order for this life to continue. Just one of many experiences. But as a child, before I was a name, I was simply observing. I was just observing that I am alive. And so I do believe that once we perish as an identified being, that's a one and done, an individual snowflake experience. And then, if we haven't come to understand that we are more the source of our life, the giver of our life, then I do believe we experience what's called incarnation. It's the return to play the life experience game again until we understand we are unified entirely with consciousness in being. We will continue to play this game over and over again until we have found ourselves totally unified with consciousness itself. And that is the purpose for why we are here. In this process of knowing thyself, we are garnering a number of life experiences, which is the same as collecting data. And that this data is extremely important for a higher dimensional way of living. For some reason, we collapse into this because there is a key within, some Easter egg that we're looking to discover. And it is understanding our truth in being amongst all of this limitation that seems to be thrust upon us. There is something incredible that comes from that. It is the restoration and illumination and immortalization of self through love. This love for self, enough to believe that there isn't anything outside of our being that could possibly pose as a destructive threat in truth. It may feel horrible, it may be experienced as terrible, but in truth, we live as this life principle. So let's take it a step further, because I know there are probably people wondering, well, I've seen people die, so how do you explain that? And I too have seen people die. I've experienced this. And I want to explain to you how subatomic phenomena occurs. There is a study called Schrodinger's cat, or the double slit experiment, but better for this example would be Schrodinger's cat. The example is as such. There is a box, and within that box, there is a cat that is resting in a state of both aliveness and death. And until you observe the box, that state of being will not reveal itself as one or the other. So before the box is opened, there is a condition of aliveness and death, both simultaneously there, awaiting its collapse into being. What this really is every life situation that you experience that involves either you giving it attention or not. Where your attention goes, as far as feeling and conviction, determines what happens to the cat in the box. And this may sound wild, but it's been proven now through multiple theories and through multiple studies that there is a shift from wave to manifest particle when we pay attention to something. It changes from waveform to what you would consider a solid, which is a concentrated waveform in localized reality. Really, in truth, it's vibration that is concentrated. And it's reduced from something that is the all. Call it superposition, call it every possibility, call it the past, present, and future. Every life experience that's ever occurred in history itself, for as far as we can see it, is encompassed by this unified field called superposition. It is the position of all things before its collapse into being. When we pay attention to it, It collapses or it reduces itself in a phenomena called objective reduction, orchestrated objective reduction, or ORC-OR. And so ORC-OR shows how that when we pay attention to something, it comes from a unified field into being, and we perceive it. So the question then is what's behind me actually happening right now? Well, I'm seeing it happen through my screen, but the bottom line is, until I turn and observe, its physicality does not exist. Therefore, we as human beings are laying the pavement and driving it at the same time. As conscious beings, this is no different than our dream state. And because this is no different than our dream state, and because consciousness is infinite in itself, it's not something more than an idea of infinite possibility. Because of this, that which we experience in our dreams is no different to the subconscious mind as what we are experiencing here in the waking life. This is a profound realization, because what it states is the subconscious is not deciding for us that our dreams are different than our waking life. Only we decide through our recorded experience what is to be a limitation to our life experience. And we have tons of conviction coming from generations and generations of human beings living and recording data into our genetics, to where what we have now, as I expectorate, what we have now is a localized life experience where we are perceiving a three-dimensional reality that is unfolding as we entertain it. This is the truth. And we are anchored into a body because it gives us a specific way to record directly in all of our life experiences that we're having. These recordings are essential for a higher state of being to evolve, somehow, in some way. Just as it's essential for a line to have 4 of its iterations to form into a higher dimensional square, just as it's essential for 6 squares to form into a higher dimensional cube, it is essential for 8 cubes to form into a higher dimensional tesseract. And on this goes. And it's believed, according to AI in my discussion with it, that there are 12 dimensions in total. And then it repeats itself going back to unification with this superior intelligence after the 12th dimensional shift. It reduces itself back to everything and nothing. Kathy McKinley, thank you for following. Laura says, look at those trails. Let's pin that. Whoops. Haroon, thanks for the invite. I was just about to pin this for Laura. Thank you, Laura. Baha'i Z, thank you for following. Yes, you are. Thank you for following. Melissa Vickers says, 1, respond to make that diagnosis less determined. I think I missed part of this message here, Melissa, but you can, if you would be so kind, point the camera to the sun, says Gotti, you got it. Let's do this now, everyone. That's a great suggestion. Let's say hello to the umbilical cord of life. This is the umbilical cord of life. And just as we have Schrodinger's cat as an example, you can decide which side of the umbilical cord you wish to reside on. One is constantly expanding with infinite possibility within a womb that doesn't require any plan, notion of understanding, or intervention. You are fed everything. On the other side, there is a placental wall. This comes from a blastocyst, which is an expansion of cancer that turns on itself in order to feed something that it never sees or directly comes in contact through, with the exception of this umbilical cord. You can decide to be on either side. On one side, you're a victim of external circumstances, subjected to a bunch of difficult life situations that seemingly are impossible to overcome. On the other side is that which never sees or understands or even comes in contact with those scenarios, but instead feeds off of all of the good that could ever be extracted from it. Without having to think about it, it simply is receiving. As if in a dream, being fed bliss on tap. You expand from the size of what would be comparable as a sperm to a human body is the same as you expanding from a grown human to the size of planet Earth itself. That type of expansion in order of magnitude is what occurs while you are in the womb. That expansion is not occurring in your physical body when you connect with the sun in the way as the star child, but instead it is happening through consciousness. So the question then becomes, which side do you prefer to be on? It's your choice. Just as it's your choice to accumulate life experiences into your identity. This is not me saying that you are a victim, nor am I going to placate you by saying you are. I'm saying it's your choice to use your kingdom however you wish. Consciousness will feed it to you. But there is polarity here. You can only be on one side or the other. This is how it works. It's the same as Schrodinger's cat. It's either alive or dead until you think it. This is where we're going, folks. Okay, so Amber says, I prefer wisdom, wisdom. Then it is your preference, and you as the domain or the ruler of your domain of aliveness are receiving this. And the more you see yourself in that state of wisdom, however it feels to you. And what I usually do is if I see something that I like that's outside of me, I understand that I can be that by saying to the infinite intelligence through the imagination, whatever it is that you're doing for this person, I now ask that you do for me and then some. I'm living it now. I'm most grateful. That's how you do it. That way you don't have to trespass. And you can receive something greater than whatever wisdom you've ever perceived. Glass says, great pep talk. Geez, I'm depressed now. You don't have to be. But it's your choice. This is the use of I am. Right? Let's talk about the use of our infinite power. I am, and what follows that is the ask. It's the request. And there's a purpose in doing this. There's a purpose. There's a reason why the word depressed exists and is so popular. It's because it gives a change in consciousness. It also invites a lot of people to fall in line with the same feeling so that we don't feel alone. One of the greatest fears for humanity is the fear of dying alone, perishing somehow in some lonely, depressed state. And to the ego, it is real. It's not to be dismissed. It's not to be said that this isn't true. For the ego, it never has access to this infinite source of creation. It believes itself all the time to be on the side of the placenta. That's life for the identity. Can't be avoided. But as much as it is on one side, it is important for it to be there. You can't have a baby fed to the point of completion and germination without having the substrate. And the substrate is that which suffers. This explains the law of polarity. For every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction, and there must be polarity for there to be light. You can't have light without resistance. So there will always be individuals who thrust themselves into a life situation repeatedly that has to do with suffering, and it is a personal choice. But that's not for everyone. It's not what everyone wants. What's beautiful about consciousness is that you can shift that polarity on its axis at any time. In fact, it can happen right now if you go into your imagination and you imagine yourself in the opposite state, which is, I am alert, I am wise, I am wish fulfilled, and I am totally enriched by this environment that I am in. And while this is happening, if you were to say this to the world at large after a lifetime of believing the opposite, it will laugh at you, it will belittle you, it will mock you, and to the extent that happened to Jesus of Nazareth, it will crucify you. The moment that you decide that the kingdom is yours and that it's always been, and announce it before it is manifest before you, is a form of self-crucifixion, or crucifixion, excuse me, self-crucifixion. I'm telling you, there's no way that won't turn awry or south, because we've fed the subconscious mind to believe all along that we are victims. So the way to do this, in truth, is not to run away from our situations of life when they're challenging. It's not to fight them either. It's not to pretend to accept them or to yell no at them. It's to simply disappear. It is to go down through the narrow gates into the imagination and live from the end with the assumption all wishes are fulfilled. Now, not in the past, thus there is regret, not in the future, thus there is rumination, but now. I am there, living from the end. That is how you heal all situations of pain and suffering in the now. But it requires something that is unbelievably essential in order for this to work. It's called faith. Faith is the belief, as we talk about belief again, that that which we see in the mind of God, the imagination, as real and manifest already. Without telling anyone, we do this in secret. And this secret, through a daily footprint of repetition and exercise, which is just another way of calling it prayer through meditation, this exercise of the daily footprint turns what would be a barren garden, or one overrun with weeds and undesirable life situations and trauma, turns it into the Garden of Eden that is our truth as wish-fulfilled beings. But we must exercise faith in being satisfied enough with the feeling first in order for this to express itself in truth outside of us. We have to be satisfied enough with the feeling. And that requires a lot of resolve, and it requires a complete and total shift of personality and being, because we have grown up to believe that the only things that are real are the things that we can see, smell, touch, hear, and taste. That's all we believe is real. So, it is a major shift that must occur. And that's why I direct everyone to the body. When we start to get into the imagination, I try to direct everyone with where the narrative is for me, which is I know there's a miracle that's happening right now. How that is happening isn't as important as it is a miracle itself. How we all came into aliveness is totally miraculous. So over the course of the next few minutes, after I check out where everyone is and what's going on here, we're going to talk about our origins, how we came about into aliveness as conscious beings, and how incredibly miraculous that is. The odds, as it were. So Drenda says, there is life beyond our consciousness. There is just aliveness. Now, whatever that story is, pearly gates or otherwise, purgatory, that's life situation based, but there is an aliveness that is constantly expressing itself whether we're here or not. And that constant is our truth in being, as made in the image and likeness of it. We as human beings are the pinnacle of conscious experience because we are granted one thing that is above and beyond, more powerful than any other aliveness in form. We are granted the imagination and its direct access without restriction or limitation. That's what sets us apart. And it's the most incredible gift. So, Amber says, I've seen what is really inside us. There you go. So Amber, you can assume to know what is going on inside other beings, just as I do. And what we can do is we can inject our life situations and stories to benefit the other. Rather than to say, I can tell you right now, I've seen inside the body and it's mechanical and it has nothing to do with aliveness. We've been lied to our entire lives. And by the way, the world is flat. And I want you to know that we were in a torture chamber. That very well could be an entertained story. And I'm not saying it's your story or mine or anyone's, to be honest. What I'm saying is the conviction that that is real is each and every individual decision that can be made by each person having their own kingdom of heaven within. I prefer to talk about the limitless source of creation being accessible to us through the imagination, and that is what leads to our salvation and being, and that it is a unique gift that is predominantly ours as human. Uniquely ours is a better word. Margie, thanks for the heart, me. Let's get caught up here. You just reached member level 7. Michelle Sparks, thanks for the shares. A-Town says, I love your share concepts in making it real practical, sir. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You're welcome, A-Town. I love that you're here and that you come by to visit with us and be here with us and to co-create with us. Melissa, encouragement friend, says, thank you for having us. You are more than welcome. We are all sharing our aliveness as gifts of an infinite intelligence and being. We are all unbelievably powerful. And Amber has seen what is really inside us using the imagination. Once again, we can't have any story without the imagination first fueling it. And that's all I'm trying to get us to. Mrs. Mogg, thank you for the heart, me. Sunflower Goddess Infinite says, peace and blessings, everyone, always coming through with such positivity and offering us these blessings. Drenda says, as I said before, there is life beyond our consciousness. And so our consciousness, or the consciousness of the ego, is life situation accumulation. That would be one part of consciousness, but it's only a small part. The giver of this story is what I am focusing on as superior in intelligence and ability, because it knows no restriction and has no bounds until we decide to impress restrictions and bounds upon it. And it is our own choice. Leandro Montero, thank you for following. Kaylin asks, how does this pertain to desired relationships? Just the same as anything else, we can apply this as far as wealth goes, as far as health goes. When it comes to relationships that we desire, we must live from the end. So your desired relationship, however you see it, needs to be formulated in your mind by living, assuming it is done. So what are those details, Kaylin? What's the person like? What do they say? Can you enjoy a life situation experience with them right now? Of course you can. But some people will say, I've tried a million times, my imagination doesn't let me. And the ego's saying, all right, let's mark another, I've got this person right now. The ego wants you to believe that you can't formulate it first in your mind. So it's going to try to set a bunch of restrictions first. First of all, it can't see you when you're in the imagination. Second of all, you depart from your identity when you use the imagination and you join your kingdom in alignment with God himself. All these things are happening while the ego is being neglected. No longer the CEO making executive decisions over our life to tell us and promise us that the solutions will come as long as we entertain time. All of that ends the moment we step into the imagination as wish fulfilled. So it will see that as an imminent threat because it actually is dying the moment we do that. It has less of a hold over us, and it has been thrust upon us. Every one of us has had an egoic self thrust upon us, and it's called indoctrination. And we all have indoctrination. It's to make sense of this world. It's not so much a bad thing unless we decide it to be the controller of our life, so that we are making our imagination a slave to it. That's where I have problems, because I see how much suffering it causes people and how it never leads to a solution that is one of desire. Sophie Pohl, thank you for following. The wave symbol, thank you for following. Drenda says, yes, faith, amen. Indeed, we've talked about faith, this idea that we see things assuming they're already completed and done, gives us the power of manifestation. Corrigan says, to get the greatness tip of happiness, you must forgive your enemies. Indeed, love thy neighbor as thyself is the same as forgiving everyone. It's this perception of separateness that is given to us by our identity, and it fears obliteration. It fears death, so we put ourselves at a distance, or we will say, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. It's the idea of you want to constantly be throwing an eye in a direction of vigilance in order to preserve yourself because you have one life to live. And that is true to the ego. It does have only one life to live. It's an incarnation. However, we are coming from an aliveness that gives infinite incarnations. That's our truth in being. See that birdie above my head below us? Or above us, rather? They're coming around. Brittany Keating, thank you for following. And this is truth right here. The kingdom is mine, indeed. And Drenda says, Jesus is the truth and the life, my friend. I can't help but to sense a little bit of imposing one's own kingdom upon my own. We'll get into it, though. We usually get this every day, and it's a judgment, of course, but I can fall into character, and I can fall into a performance to explain how I interpret this in order for it to benefit the two of us. Jesus, let's look at the etymology of this word. And before you run away, don't stay here because it's going to help. Otherwise, you wouldn't have taken the energy to write this, Drenda. Jesus means salvation. We can all come to agreement that there are words which have meanings, and through association we can understand what they are. It's called etymology. The etymology of Jesus is the same as Yeshua. It means salvation. And so what is salvation to Drenda? In this case, I could assume to know what it is, but if I assumed what Drenda's salvation is, I would be trespassing. Can't do that. That goes against the 10 Commandments, to trespass upon someone else's kingdom. And of course, thank you, Zohai, for the invite. We are shutting off co-host invites for the day, and I'm so grateful that we reached this point because it seems to be incessant. I have no interest in competing against anyone here and going into a battle for the very reason that I'm looking to unify myself with as many embodiments of God as possible, understanding the kingdom of heaven is within and is limitless. Therefore, I don't have to compete for space, money, time, or anything at all, unless I impose it upon myself as a conscious choice. In this case here, we're talking about Christ consciousness. Yes, Christ consciousness is this idea of a limitless kingdom within. The kingdom of heaven, as explained by Jesus of Nazareth, a character, having a life experience, coming into being, one in being with the Father of creation, was the life experience of Jesus of Nazareth, and it resulted in resurrection. As this resulted in resurrection, it was because the conviction was there that he was something more than his collection of life experiences and his body himself, therefore had no issues with it being sacrificed and crucified in order for everyone to understand the truth through his resurrection, that we are all made in the image and likeness of this consciousness, this superior intelligence which has no bounds. It is infinite, it is birthless, it is deathless, it is changeless, and that it is constantly expressing expansion and aliveness through care. It is immortal. Jesus did not want to say, and did not say to anyone, that I am the kingdom of your domain, that I am the one who is the Messiah over your domain. He said, the kingdom of heaven is within you, and it is not of this world. Of course, the Pharisees did not understand this. They saw it as a threat. They said he's calling himself a Messiah. He's saying that his kingdom is here, so we will call him the King of the Jews. That's what Jesus of Nazareth was referred to by the Pharisees and the Roman prefectorates. He was called the King of the Jews, and he was misunderstood. He was believed to be claiming that he was somehow like Abraham, the king of multiple kingdoms, who has come here to claim his domain over all of us, who have already claimed domain over everyone else. And so he was killed for it. He was crucified for it because he was misunderstood. And it wasn't until later on, upon his resurrection, in which he was made, not begotten by man, which is not conceived by mother and father, but one in being, one in aliveness with the source of all creation. That to me was his salvation. The fact that he could have his own domain, and no matter, even if someone crucified him to the point of total obliteration, he would be resurrected from this conscious source of being, no matter the odds. And he proved it. And he proved it so that everyone could be forgiven for ever thinking that they were victims of external circumstances. They hated Jesus so much that they kept him at a distance. They threw things at him. They stripped away his flesh, and they hammered nails into his body and crucified him on a cross out of the fear that him being control or in control over their own domain was such a threat that he would have to be destroyed right now. Those individuals were deifying their external environment. They deified their external worlds. They were not seeing the total, infinite source of their own kingdom within. And this is why Jesus of Nazareth said during the stations, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." He recognized that they all had this infinite kingdom, Christ consciousness, and that their salvation was not outside of themselves by crucifying him, by pushing him away, by feeding him vinegar when all he did was thirst. No, their salvation was within, through faith, by living from the end as a wish-fulfilled self, that it was their own individualized power, and that everyone had it. And so it seems like the message has continued in a distorted way all the way to this day, to where I can say the word Jesus and suddenly people are offended because immediately it's associated with a physical form that is outside of self that must be revered in order for there to be salvation, which is the name of Jesus itself. That the salvation comes through fear, indoctrination, and needing to adhere to the rules and regulations of a church or a state or a government or some belief system. And by not doing that, that person is perceived as a threat and must be stopped at all costs, is no different than what happened to Jesus of Nazareth. And I'll tell you, in the book of Genesis, it's referred to as the serpent. The serpent comes forward and says, "Would you like to be like God? I can get you really close. You can have all the things you ever wanted. You just have to take from this tree and partake from it. This forbidden fruit. You have to, I can't tell you this secret, but you have to believe that you're actually not an embodiment of this infinite intelligence anymore. The moment that you believe that, I can get you really close to God. I can get you so close. You just have to partake in this idea that you're a victim, that you are lacking in some way, that you don't have enough. And as soon as you do, I can get you so close to where you'll believe yourself to be the closest that anyone has ever been to having salvation. But you have to do these things for me. You have to do this, and then you have to do that, and you have to do this from 9 until 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and then you'll have your salvation." So that's just called temptation. Temptation to believe that we are limited in some way while we have the infinite imagination before us right now. So most people perceive this narrative as a threat to their own existence because it challenges something that is so deep-seated. It's not only deep-seated to one's identity, but it's deep-seated to the very genetics that our body carries. It's been carrying it for over 2,000 years, is the idea that if we don't adhere to an indoctrination outside of ourselves, that we will not be saved. Salvation is seen as outside of ourselves rather than through the infinite kingdom within. Christ represents the anointed one. It means anointment. And what anointment happens? When anointment happens, it is the coronation of a king or a queen. It is the anointment of oil from the kingdom for an emperor or an empress. They are bathed in the oils of their environment. That is their true kingdom. That is what Christ means, the anointed one. And so when you step into your infinite source of being, the imagination, which knows no bounds and has no restrictions until thinking it makes it so, you are stepping into your kingdom and you are being bathed in the oils that lead to your salvation. Christ is the seed. Jesus is the salvation. Christ is the seed. Jesus is the salvation. It's in that order. Seed and harvest. When you step in to the imagination, your salvation is there. By living from the end, whether it's convincing someone of something being your salvation, which it certainly can be. It's trespassing, but it can be there. Of course, I don't recommend it. What I would recommend is you step in and you see everyone totally loved and cared for, that everyone received their salvation in the way that is best provided by a superior intelligence. That is how we love our neighbor as ourself. We see everyone wish fulfilled. And if you don't know how to see everyone wish fulfilled, I can tell you can do just as good seeing yourself as wish fulfilled. That way you can have your kingdom, I can have mine, and we will not trespass upon one another unless it is total error. Error is just another word for evil. It is evil to believe that someone must adhere to my belief system, so I have a number of them. If I say to you, you must believe this or else I am offended, you will be shut down, I will stop you at all costs, then I have trespassed upon your kingdom. Same thing goes with anyone else who tries to say it to me. I know that my world is limitless through the imagination, and that I am granted this exclusively as this body, just as every human being has their own exclusive, infinite kingdom, so as not to trespass upon others. As we lead ourselves not into the temptation, but deliver ourselves from evil, the error of believing that we are limited and restricted in some way by external circumstances and indoctrination. This is what led to the crucifixion, thinking in Spanish, it's what led to the crucifixion of Jesus. This very topic was so threatening, it led to his death. Can't deny it, it's the truth. So, Merla says, does seed equal word? Melissa asks, are you agnostic or atheist? And so I want to answer all of these beautiful questions, okay? I want you to understand that my belief systems as an identity are meaningless. They just are for functionality in this life experience. But they're not ones that you should ever believe yourself, aside from the one, which is your imagination is your kingdom of heaven. And it's exclusively yours. So as for me to never trespass upon it. So as people are asking me what my belief system is, we do this so naturally, almost unconsciously, in order to make sense of things. Is this person a threat to my existence, or are they going to enhance mine? Can I be closer to this person, or should I be at a distance? This is because the ego will never see the imagination in truth. It will only assume to know the answers to all of our problems by leading us into more problems through the construction of time. When I explain to you that time is a construct that is man-made, it becomes very difficult or challenging for most people to accept. But once I have time to explain this to people with enough scientific theory as well as practicality, we can start to come into the idea, the understanding. And you don't have to believe it, of course, but I believe it's helpful for people to overcome their pain remembrances, to understand we create time through the imagination. The past is already a present moment that has occurred. By revisiting it, we must use the imagination, which is Christ consciousness, for its creation, in order to entertain it. We do this unconsciously in order to label things and make sense of our environment. It is a mode of survival that has been built into us as humans prior to the development of the prefrontal cortex. It's part of our fear center, the central nucleus of the amygdala, and we do it unconsciously in order to preserve ourselves and stay alive as ego self beings. Now, through the advancements of technology and modernization, we no longer have, or most of us, I should say, are no longer subject to the same threats as we once were. So the battle, if there ever was one, is in the mind, in convincing ourselves that there is no threat, unless thinking it makes it so. So, let's get to this. Tyler says, Buddhism is letting go, Christianity, unconditional love, Hindu, chakra and incarnation. It's a pretty decent summary. I mean, that's a good belief system. I think there's a lot of wisdom there. Once again, it's Tyler's using the infinite intelligence to build these constructs within, first through the imagination so they can express outward. It's just the use of power. Same thing here with Drenda saying today is yesterday's tomorrow. Same thing, using our infinite power to create a construct or a life situation or an identification with a story. I do the same thing every time I go live. We're all doing this. Amber, spelling apologies. Rosecution. Holly Dolly, thanks for following. Tyler, thank you for the heart me and the heart puff. So this question coming from Melissa, and are you agnostic or atheist? I would say I am Christian, which means I believe in Christ consciousness being the kingdom of heaven, also being the imagination, and infinite intelligence that knows the means and the way to my salvation. And my salvation differs from everyone else, and it differs by the moment and the day. In other words, right now, my salvation is the sun because it provides me warmth in the cold. In the summer, it could be the cold for the warm. I could be thirsty, my salvation becomes water. The idea is for me to believe myself to being in that state of salvation, and I receive this through the imagination first as a concept in the mind of God, and thus through faith it manifests in my physical reality. But that is the salvation that comes through faith. It is the result. So this environment is the effect of one's process and work with the imagination. It appears to be local and static, but it is the same as dream state because the subconscious mind is bringing it forth. It is bringing it forth, and it does not discriminate. Therefore, the subconscious mind does not discriminate nor declare. It knows the difference between dream state and waking life. Only we do, as selective beings that are choosing things through thoughts, decide there is a difference between day and night, good and bad, full and empty, hungry and fulfilled, rich and poor. All of these things, including sleeping and awakeness, all have to do with personal decisions that we make as discerning beings, and it is part of our consciousness. It is the masculine principle of consciousness, that which decides things. And it is the feminine portion of consciousness which expresses things as the womb of creation. And it is the infinite intelligence, the imagination, that powers it all. Okay? All right. Polarity, exactly, Amber. We must have polar opposites in order for there to be the illusion of life experience. So life experience is the result of polar opposites creating tension, and that tension generates light, which gives us the conscious experience of human. So you can't remove one without removing the other, and the whole system falls apart. This is how yin-yang is described. Yin-yang, the circular symbol, it has light and darkness with pinpoints, mini circles within that carry the contrast. It's like a portal in a way. You take away one side, the whole system falls apart. So you have to have, in order to have this dualistic life experience, you have to have contrasts. That's how the three-dimensional world works. I explain it to people in a scientific way that this physical reality, as we perceive as physical, is in fact holographic. The way that it is holographic is as such. In order for you to have a holograph, you have to have a two-dimensional surface. The two-dimensional surface must allow light to pass through it, which then projects a three-dimensional form. Okay? So here's how it works. In order for us to perceive 3D, we must have a 2D medium. And in order for you to perceive 4D, you must have a 3D medium. So whatever dimension we're trying to perceive, the storage medium or its framework must be a lower dimension. Just as you have a square, its lower dimension must be a line, 4 of them creating a construct. In order for you to have a cube, its lower dimensional medium must be the square. There are pedestrians coming. So we have a three-dimensional experience. It's carried out through, I just have to take a drink of water. It's carried through a holographic medium, which is two-dimensional. It's managed through protein synthesis on a scientific level through our genetics or DNA. It's all crystalline. So it's a crystalline, technically two-dimensional medium that is constantly layering itself or writing upon itself new information and projecting itself through a holographic medium. That holographic medium, in truth, is hexagonal. When you have a hexagon that is two-dimensional, it allows there to be a projection that creates a form of cube, which is the standard three-dimensional standard form, is the cube. You can get a cube by projecting light, photons, which come from a source, as well as biophotons from our cells. They work in combination with each other or in conjunction or in coherence with one another to project light through a two-dimensional hexagonal medium, which creates a three-dimensional construct of perception. And within that, all things form are generated. This happens so fast, at such a rate, that we do not perceive it as such. We perceive it as very real, textured, layered, depth, beautiful. And we even feel it through haptics and sensory experience, so it's psychosomatic. But it happens so quickly, at such a refresh, that we wouldn't question it, and we don't want to question it. We want it to be real, because the moment that it becomes something other than real, we'll start to question it. And if we question it, we'll no longer be anchored in it, because we become what we think about. So this explains entheogenic experiences. Someone takes something that changes their consciousness, that's from the external environment. That change of consciousness usually is an enhancement of one's own perception. So they'll see brighter colors, perhaps a faster frame rate. Whatever it is, fractal designs seem to be higher dimensional. And what that does is it removes the anchor from one's conscious belief system that they are basically just an identity. And that leads someone down the path of being attached to wanting illumination, or basically to be freed from this game experience. But the truth of the matter is, we have a purpose in being here. There's a purpose in it being convincing. And it's for us to come to the understanding that we are something more than our identity. When someone is experiencing something as far as entheogens, they are simply coming into understanding their truth and being earlier than perhaps what would have happened if they were just going through hardship and coming into being that way. I got people walking dogs very fast behind me. So I'm going to go off the beaten path and just continue speaking with you folks. And it's good, because this life situation is great. It gives me a chance to see if I can continue delivering you wisdom and knowledge while also feeling the excitement of being pursued. And these people aren't pursuing me. They're just walking the path as I'm walking the path. That's all it is. Let's get caught up here. Veggie, nice to see you again. Thanks for sharing. What else we got here? We got people talking to each other. I'll scroll in a second. By the way, we've had about I would say a 20 to 25 degree Fahrenheit drop. Happened very quickly since the broadcast began. So I'm going to take a moment in just a second to step off the beaten path and put some pressure, some mechanical stress on a stone that I brought with me, and generate some heat from that. Warm my hands, and then we'll be back on track. Thank you for all the love, by the way. We're at 24,900 feet above sea level, which is a beautiful thing. I'll come over here and have a seat on this log, because we got a nice view of the sun right here. I'm going to show it to you. I'm going to get caught up. And I'll warm my hands at the same time. So let's get caught up here. Mama Bear says, grand rising beautiful souls. Tyler, yeah, that's exactly it, Tyler. You depicted it. Veggie says, hi. Tyler says, we are here to lay the physical groundwork and observe. That's a narrative I can abide by. Not that it matters. Amber says, when my spirit detached from body, it was a blue fractal crystalline form. Amber, I can tell you, I had a similar experience. This is beautiful. I saw myself as electric blue when I experienced what would be considered an entheogenic DMT dump. I experienced an electric blue body. iCalBS72, thank you for following. Let's see. Good afternoon, sent by Tyler. Thank you so much. RealBiz253 shared. Thank you. Mariga, thank you for following. Kat says God is the frequency of love. I love that story. I can vibe with that for sure. Servinki says property taxes is a threat to me. How do I stop paying legally? That's my question. I suppose we can dive into that narrative for a bit, Servinki, and talk about it. Tyler says, okay, I caught up here. Buddhism, letting go. Christianity, unconditional love. Drenda says today is yesterday's tomorrow, and now we're caught up with all things, I'm pretty sure. Actually, Holly Dolly followed. Thank you very much, Holly Dolly. Tyler sent over a heart me and a heart puff, and we got Temez sing, I don't have to forgive, just accept. Marilla says, does seed equal word, as in Jesus' word must be planted and brought forth to fruition? Amber says, my mom grounded me for buying and reading a Gnostic Bible at 16. I'm 52 now and still study it. That's cool. And Kat followed. Zaka says, I will, yes. He planted you, just stop, man. Drenda says, as a man or woman thinketh, so is he. Indeed, Drenda, I agree with that. What else we have here? Allison Crowley says, we are our thoughts. Yes, I agree with that. Catherine Align says, yes, direct divine connection is available now. Indeed. Leb says, IMO, the original sin is the illusion of separation from source. I agree with that too. Esbro followed. Thank you, Esbro, if you're still here. Delights of Zion followed. Thank you for following if you're still here. Tyler, thanks for the let 'em cook. I didn't catch it when it came through. Amber says yes. Leb's giving 100%. And Amber says, where are all the books showing what he did after resurrection? I think you could say most of the Bible, perhaps. I mean, the Bible has taken 1,500 years to write, but a lot of it is missing. A lot of the original, the Coptic texts were discovered in the caves. The Nag Hammadi was discovered in 1947, and that was a big boatload of text. So it seems like a lot of these things are still in the process of being discovered, or they just won't ever be recovered. But it took, I think, 1,500 years for the Bible, like King James Bible, to be written in its entirety and be accepted as complete. So Amber says, I read those. Oh, the Nag Hammadi and the Dead Sea Scrolls. Those came out in 1947, and you have to also keep in mind that those Coptic texts were translated by a Yaley who claimed himself to be a specialist. And I'm not saying that he's not a specialist, but, we're talking about a translation from another text of an old language. So all of these things are important to keep in mind. Tyler, or at least I would keep them in mind as important when reviewing the texts. Tyler, thank you for the heart puff ×3. Lucky Dad of 13, you followed me again. I love that you follow me multiple times. It means that you are going through multiple timelines. Or it could mean that I'm going through multiple timelines. Dank Main says, enjoying the convo today. Thank you, Dank Main. It's great to see you here, and thanks for joining us again. I call BS 72 says, yes, and it's that simple. Just love. I love that. And when you love, you are just being. I try to coin this term. The isness is the business of the now. So the isness is the aliveness. You're watching your aliveness. Like, it brings a real ease to self, because the self doesn't have to figure out the way. That doesn't mean don't do anything, or, you don't have to keep going to do your daily tasks or work or whatever, but to instead just come into observation of those things, more than being a performer of them or a reaction to them or a definer of them. Dima Surta, thank you for following. And Amber says, so interesting. Mama Bear says, hope you're all having a beautiful day. I think I got that before. Sometimes we repeat these things. So Tyler's answering Dank Main, and I don't know why this was filtered. Talking about the cave of Brahman, or the crystal palace, which is the pineal. The pineal gland is part of this system. The crystal palace, or the cave of Brahman, is known as the third ventricle in the brain, and it's filled with cerebrospinal fluid. And I have explained that through sun gazing and meditation, the quality of one's CSF, or cerebrospinal fluid, improves for regeneration and activation of what would be considered dormant DNA. or, dead DNA, whatever it is, it starts to regenerate areas of the brain which were once considered irrecoverable or unable to be generated into life, into the life principle, and serve us. All right, I'm going to switch the stones now. Let me show you the stone I'm using. Let's get some sun here. I'm talking, it's at least a 25 to 30 degree drop since we began. So now I'm feeling it. There were a few days for my brown adipose tissue to kind of go back. Thank you for that superpower, Tyler. Oh, that was a good one. I felt it. Oh, okay, so Tyler, thank you for explaining. Dankmane said, do you think heaven has castles? So you could refer to, the Crystal Palace as the kingdom's domain within. Why it's called the Crystal Palace is if you're doing sun gazing, like we can try it. You won't be able to see what I'm seeing, but you can certainly try to induce it for yourself. I'll show you right now. We can try to create an effect called phosphenes. You won't be able to get it from this light through your phone, most likely. But sometimes I've experienced this, just not as intensely in the dark or in the morning. So one thing that I suggest is you could get yourself access to some binaural beats for hemisync. So hemispherical synchronization of frequency allows for an effect to occur when you receive photons from the sun. Radiation from the sun permeates the skin, it permeates the skull, and it stimulates your pineal gland. As you turn your eyes slightly inward, they rest in a comfortable position when your eyes are closed. And that's a meditative rest for your eyes. It creates a slight mechanical stress on the calcite crystals that reside on your third eye. It creates a tiny charge of electricity. That charge stimulates your third ventricle and the cerebrospinal fluid there. And as your brain comes into sync with the earth at 7.83 hertz, you will notice a cycling of energy in the form of light known as phosphenes. And they cycle about every 4 seconds. And they will show you the cave of Brahman. You'll get a chance to see what it looks like within you. And it is fractal in design. It starts wide and then narrows as any cave would. As the light passes through, it can curve in different directions as if you are emitting a beam. And so, depending on where your focus may be as the phosphenes effect occurs, they could be sending a beam curving upward. I tend to experience that when I say the words gratitude. I repeat the word gratitude with the 4-second cycle, gratitude. Those phosphenes will curve upward. Sometimes if my thought is on something that I desire, I will see the phosphene effect start on the right side and curve to the left. Sometimes it's clear and very strong and fractal. I've even seen a 5-pointed star with the head of the star pointing upward. I've seen that. Otherwise, it's more of a spiral type of fractal design, which is likely a combination of melatonin, dimethyltryptamine, and electric current, sending a pulse of photons, both biophotons from the cells and photons from the sun in conjunction through the body, coming back in cycle with the sync of the earth at 7.83 hertz. So it's about a 4-second cycle, because you have to think of it as it has to go out at that frequency and then it has to cycle back. And so would be a 4-second cycle of return. Okay. It's just under. And so what I find is I've experienced this with phosphenes for the last 3 years, just about. And it's a beautiful, blissful experience. It's addicting. It's mood elevating. And I believe that it is a form of upgrade for your CSF. And what it does is it allows you to tap into the walking encyclopedia that you mentioned, Mama Bear. Has nothing to do with William as an identity. It has to do with William being open enough to surrender to Source so that it can fall in. You'll see this happen to Bashar. You'll see it happen to Abraham Hicks. You'll see it happen to Sadhguru, Krishnamurti. You'll see it happen to a number of spiritual teachers. And some will say that it's channeling, but it's really just the person surrendering to Source enough to where the words come through without interruption, and it's enjoyable for them. So they return to it, and it refines them. And I would say that I'm certainly not trying to place myself as William Vincent Carlton in the camp of great spiritual teachers. I'm saying I know how to surrender enough to understand the instrument and how it works. And I play the instrument, just like, others would play the instrument or another instrument. I've come into being with it enough to understand that it works when I surrender, if that makes sense. Mama Bear says, oh my God, I love them all. Yeah, me too. Michelle says, I was daydreaming on Sunday. This was February 23rd, and I had a comet of rainbow sparkly light in my left eye. That sounds like it could have been phosphenes in some way, Michelle. Yeah, and this is the idea that we all have access to this source, that there is no exception. Just as there's no exception of any human being who does, every human being has access to the imagination. So just as you have access to the imagination, you become what you think about. The more you enjoy any creative process, the more you're going to fall into being. But what I would suggest is check out binaural beats. Because the moment that your brain falls into sync, it will become comfortable and familiar with the process. You do that and you take to the woods. Thank you for letting them cook, Tyler, in our puff. Yeah, the more you come into being in that way, the more comfortable you'll feel with it, the better it will feel flowing through your body. And the things that you love to do, which are creative, simply become enhanced. That's it. They become an enhanced conscious experience. And of course, as DMT improves in its quality in the body, it eventually reaches a point where you will want to detach from the anchored egoic self. This happens in a very fast way. If someone is experiencing entheogens, it kind of forces you to have ego death for a short period of time. However, the more that you're doing sun gazing and meditation, and the more that you love yourself through the imagination, the greater and faster your DMT will upgrade and eventually detach you from your egoic self. So then you become not begotten by man, one in being with the Father, which you already are, but you'll come into being with consciousness of this. You'll consciously become aware of this. And that would be called illumination. It would be called illumination, at which point in time you could decide to keep playing out your life here, play out your life experience, live a wish-fulfilled life, enrich the lives of others. You could serve as a bodhisattva and help to give people the knowledge that they need for their illumination so that they can also enjoy a wish-fulfilled self without pain. So, Caroline Harris says, I just meditated and got scared because I was literally floating. There you go. Yeah, you're in being. That's beautiful, Caroline. What a wonderful experience. People fly in their dreams, and it's the subconscious mind not knowing the difference. Perhaps you're tapping into your truth in being. I wouldn't throw it past you. I believe. Lucky Dad of 13 says, yeah, I got an app with binaural beats in all kinds of frequencies. Love it. Yeah, there's HemiSync. You can look this up on YouTube. Binaural beats, HemiSync. And you can just sit with those frequencies for a while. If you have headphones, it works best. It's an auditory phenomena. It's a hallucination. It's an auditory hallucination where you hear wave patterns when in fact they're solid frequencies. But when you set them apart slightly in frequency by hertz, just by a few notches, what it creates in the distance of traveling between the hemispheres of the body is a form of wave. And that oscillation is determined by the difference of frequency that's coming into your ears. It's an auditory hallucination. You could remove one headphone side and you'll hear just a solid frequency beep, but you put down both and it goes you know. And what this does is it encourages the brain to fall into sync. Falls into sync, and what's nice is you can hear the difference. You can hear the auditory phenomena. People like to feel the things that I'm talking about. People like to experience the sensory change. So binaural beats are really cool because you can test that immediately. You can put them on and you can just do one ear and then you can put on the other one and now you hear the waves. You say, oh, okay, cool, that's happening. I realize that I'm generating that. And it helps people. Just like it probably helps you, feel the floating from your body. It's like it's freaky, it's kind of crazy, but you're experiencing it. It's an out-of-body experience. And so what's happening is you're becoming more in sync with the resting frequency of this beautiful womb of creation, this planet, than being in a life situation, as an identity. Serve in KY says you can do that on your own with vibrating your own vocal cords humming. Cool, I didn't realize that. Would that be like, what is it, glottal sounds? Is that what it's called, glottal? Lucky Dad of 13 says, I hemi-sync every day. I just about do it too. It's helped a lot with getting access to these experiences, especially phosphenes. So phosphenes started to come about in my experience through binaural beats. Gigi says, William, has anyone told you today that your eyes are beautiful, they sparkle? Only you, Gigi, and I'm most grateful for you. Thank you so much for saying that. I'm blushing. Holly Dolly says 432 hertz. It's a great hertz to set any instrument to in order for you to be in alignment with the solfeggio scales or solfeggio. Yeah, everyone seems to know their stuff. Mama Bear says, I have the app for HemiSync. Cool, okay. Servinky says, yes, none of these girls have nothing on us. We can all tap in, indeed. We are divine beings. So this is great. Michelle says, I was daydreaming. Okay, we got that. We caught up. I'm glad, Amber. Thank you. And, I know sometimes that I can challenge people's belief systems. It's simply because we all want to tell each other about the things that we've tried on the menu of life that we love the most, or perhaps that we're weary of. And we do this because we all care for one another. In a way, it's a form of care. I'm just saying that to say, I'm just telling the story to tell it, because this is why we choose things. We choose things because we want to share our experiences. By sharing our experiences, we experience closeness in some way to one another. So it's beautiful to have access to the infinite imagination, while at the same time we have access to our life experience as human beings in body. We're given the gift of both. So we've come full circle here on our beautiful sojourn today. And I want to thank all of you and let you know how grateful I am that we've had this moment, this time together. And to also understand that one thing I can guarantee all of you is we reach our destined shores. Every day, we reach our destination. That was the thing that I wanted to say the other day, because sometimes we're going to have turbulence, sometimes it's going to be rocky, sometimes things might not work out as planned as far as the travel arrangements go here in the woods. But one thing you can count on above all else is that we reach our destined shores every time. That's what's most important, that there be closure in this way, okay? Like any song, we want its resolution, and we do get that here. Gail, thank you for the love. Tyler, thanks for the heart puffs. A Day in the Life says we don't have to give up our belief systems to do these things. Indeed, that's true, and that's a beautiful kindness to offer in saying that, A Day in the Life. You're right, we all have our own unique belief systems, and we do not need to sacrifice them, put them aside, or let go of them in any way in order for us to be empowered through these teachings. We are stepping into ownership over our kingdom of heaven within, and that gives us ownership over the manifestation of our lives. Carolyn Harris, awesome. This is what I'm thinking about practicing. Thank you, Sunflower Goddess Infinite says. I believe that has to do with, I think, hemisync. Oh, have you ever used breath work to elevate states of consciousness? Indeed, Sunflower. So one of the things we can do one day is I can teach us Shakti breath, though I'm not going to do it today, but you can remind me. We can do some long, deep breathing, and I can show you how to activate the pineal gland in an interesting way through breath work. We can certainly do that. Let's see. Let's see what we got here. I hear the chickadees. That's a nice quartz. These all scrub up really nice too. Oh yeah, here's the one. Hello, chickadee. I hear the chickadee saying, come feed me. Yeah, they want to be fed, so let's go feed them. So what we can do one day is we can do some Shakti breath, and we can really start to work on the pineal gland together. Ear one, thank you for following. Okay. Yeah, absolutely, Sunflower. If I can ask you so kindly to just remind me when we're live. And what we'll do is we'll take a good 5 minutes or more, and I'll show you Shakti breath. But for now, you can just do some long, deep breathing through the nostrils in a comfortable seated position while monitoring your breath. And a great book that teaches this in a simple way is How to Love by Thich Nhat Hanh. Thich Nhat Hanh, How to Love. It's a very quick book that talks about long, deep breathing. And he also teaches the meditation of walking. So walking as a meditation, it's also really good. And you can experience bliss from this too. That's what I do every day. Just not as concentrated as Thich Nhat Hanh teaches it. But How to Love is a great book. Breathing through the nostrils creates nitric oxide, and it's a mood elevator. So you can practice that too. Thank you for following. I think that says Jinjin. I think that's, maybe I'm saying it wrong. Those are cool robotic characters. They remind me of a Hermes typewriter that has the robot font. It's one of my favorite types of font. Thanks for following. Okay, folks, we're coming to the end of our sojourn today. I want to thank all of you for your presence, for your aliveness, and for the creation of time with me today so we can have these discourses. You can expect to find this on YouTube sometime this evening or perhaps early in the morning. And my link to YouTube is in my bio. So in case you came in later and you want to know what we discussed, we had a great discourse today about a number of topics, all very exciting. Now we talked about the kingdom of heaven, how it's within, and how we access it. Let's give some food to the birds. Let's give some food to the birds. I'm typically on around 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Today was much later just because of life situations, but that is typically when I am on. Thank you for asking. Okay. I hear the nuthatches are around, so they'll probably come for a morsel or two. Let's grab the feeder. It's that time of day. Okay. All right. Oh, there is a woodpecker at work. Just don't see it. Well, it's pretty quiet tonight. Thank you for all the love that came in today. Elliot Ray, thanks for the heart me and for joining the team. I want to thank all of you. Caroline, thanks for the heart me. Let's see if I missed anyone here. I try not to. To everyone coming through today, following, asking poignant questions, and for all the kindnesses offered, all the love bubbles, the 30,700 love bubbles that have come through today, really helps so much in bringing people in here for the first time so that you can come into your being as divine consciousness. And so I'm just praying for you to exercise that God-given right to be wish fulfilled in the mind of God through the imagination, understanding that that plants seeds in the subconscious for its realization and manifestation, that you give yourself that daily footprint for at least a few minutes every day. And if you ever need to return to that practice, you can find it. As we are walking in the woods, you can simply just listen to the sounds of the words and drift off into your state of wish-fulfilled being. This is always available to you so that you never feel without. Okay. Thank you, Amber, for your kindness. Sunflower Goddess says thank you again for your presence. Have an amazing night. You too. I love you all. This is the end of the broadcast. You'll see me tomorrow afternoon. Expect this recording on YouTube momentarily. Thank you. Tyler made a vid in the style of MVC. Cool. Light Warrior, thanks for your love. Maristol, thank you for following. See you in dreams, says Amber, I believe. WVC. Oh, cool. I love that, Tyler. Very nice. Thanks, Silver Goblet. I love you all. May your wish fulfillment be realized, speeding its way to you. I love you.